What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to learn how to make custom materials in Twinmotion. This is awesome. I know a lot of you have been asking for this, and it just makes sense because, there's only a limited number of materials that we have access to in Twinmotion. It just makes sense that you probably have something that you'd like to make yourself. You have something that you need that Twinmotion does not have. So before we get into it, if at any point in this video you happen to learn something, demolish that like button. Really helps me out a lot. Also consider changing the phase of that subscribe button to existing. Please subscribe. It helps me out so much. All right, jumping into it now. I'm in just a basic scene in Twinmotion. There's nothing special going on here. Got 3 cubes, and we're going to populate these cubes with some custom materials. And we're going to have to see what we're going to have to do for different types of materials. I've got a wood material we're going to look at. We've got a metal material we're going to look at, and then a fencing material that has, like a cutout fence. And each one of those are going to require just slightly different settings with each material, but they're not that hard, and we're going to get into it now. Let's start applying materials. So I'm going to start with the material picker. I'm going to choose this material. It's going to bring up all my materials here. I don't need to worry about any of the materials over here that are out of Twinmotion because, again, we're making our own custom material. So let's go over here to this specific cube. There's nothing special here, but we want to click the grid here, and this is going to take us to all the materials that we have in our project. And if I click on this circle again, it's going to take me back to the currently selected material, so I can go back and forth that way. So before we even add a new material, something to be aware of is if you see a check mark here at the bottom right hand of all of these materials, that tells me and that tells you that they are in use. In other words, I've got this water material applied to a ground. I've got each one of these 3 cubes that have their own material there. And, that's annoying, but that's just kind of the way it is. And unfortunately, I can't even right click and delete them. That's just the way it is because they're applied to that particular object. That's okay. We don't need to worry about that so much, but we do need to hit big old plus. So let's hit the plus. We've got a new material. And at this point, I'm going to always tell you this. Please rename it. My gosh, please do that. So let's right click this, rename this, and let's call it wood. This is going to be our wood material. So everything, the nice thing about materials is that we have all these settings that we can touch and do everything that we need to do, but we don't really have to necessarily, depending on the type of material. So this wood material, the first is going to be a non-metal material, and it's the first, it's the type of material that you're probably going to use the most. And then we'll look at metals and what we're going to have to do for that particularly. So right now, all I need to do is hit more under the color. So if you're familiar with the types of materials and the types of files, we are going to create a PBR material, a physically based rendered material. So we're looking for any number of maps, and those maps are particular to physically based rendered materials because those are what make the materials look physically real. And so we need like an albedo or a diffuse map, which is literally just, in other words, a color map. What does the color of the material look like? And that's going to go in our color field here. And I'll get to the other types of maps that we need to worry about as we move on. So we can hit color and we can just change the color. That's not really doing us any good. And you can see our color updated there. I'm going to undo that because we don't really care about the color. We want to add a map that's going to hold all those colors for us. So let's hit more. And whenever I do that, I can see I've got all these different settings to look at, specifically the textures. Now, the default texture is just this white texture map that's by default created whenever you create a material. I don't want this one. So I'm going to actually click on this icon here, and I can choose any number of things here. I can start to copy this around if I want to use this map in different places. I can just clear it out. I can refresh it if I had updated it myself. But in this case, I want to open. So I'm going to open this. And I've got a few materials here. There's our wood, our metal, and our fence. So let's first go to our wood. And again, these are the different types of materials and types of maps that you might be looking to create when it comes to something like a PBR material. So in this case, I want to use the diffuse. You'll see diffuse, albedo, color map, anything like that. So I've got a diffuse. So I'm going to apply that grade. And so nothing happened. So nothing happened because I didn't apply this material. I need to actually drag this material over to this particular cube, and there we go. It doesn't look bad. Already it's looking okay. This is the result you'd get if you were in SketchUp, because SketchUp only is able to take this one particular map, and if you're stuck with this, that's okay. It looks good, but we're in Twinmotion. We want this to be a physically based rendered material, so we want to go ahead and use all the maps that we can to make this look physically real. At this point, Because of the type of map that it is, I don't have to worry about anything else within the color. See how you can see I'm in wood and then color. The particular breadcrumb is called color within the wood material. So this next here is the opacity mask. Now, if I had any sort of cutout or any sort of like fully transparent portion of the wood, having this on would actually make a difference because I could see through it. And we're going to get to that later in the video with the fence. But because this is wood, it's solid, I'm not seeing through it. It doesn't matter if this is on or off. It really doesn't matter. So I tend to not touch it. Luminosity, this is a default value of 50%, which means it's going to give you the value of light that is emitted from the file that you're using. You know, you can make this brighter if you need to. You can make it darker if you need to. But I tend to want to keep it at 50% because that is the color of the map that I have just applied. Now, grunge is nice, but this is kind of a universally used, tool within all the materials. It's just something you can add to all materials. It's going to look similar and you can add it if you want. I don't want it because I want to see my wood. And of course, the sound if you're walking on it, whatever. We don't care about that. So let's go back out here to the overall material. So at this point, reflection. I can customize this all myself. I can bring this value up and that looks great. If I want this to be a completely reflective wood, which I don't want it to be because it's wood, I probably want to keep this pretty low. But before I do that, I actually want to go to more, and we have a particular map that we can use here. Now, if you're familiar with other maps, again, I'm going to go and click open. I want to use a roughness map, and this roughness map is going to basically tell Twinmotion, or really any other 3D program that uses PBR material maps and a roughness map, using the roughness map where I want the reflection to be more prominent. The whiter the values in this particular file, the more reflective. The more black, the less reflective. And so you can see this is basically black with a few exceptions, and that's just because it's wood. That's great. And once I do that, I can come back here, and now you can see as I start to change the reflection, I get similar results, but that's basically what I want. I want my reflection to be based on my roughness map. Something to be aware of also is that when the reflection is set to 50%, this is kind of like the base value of what my material really should be set at. And so like that, it's reading my roughness map here at kind of a base level, just like the luminosity. 50% is kind of that baseline. So that's where I want to at least start my reflection. Now, I don't want it at 50 because of the wood properties. And so I probably want this a bit lower, maybe 10 to 20%. That's fine. It's got a little bit of reflection, but really not much at all. Okay, that's looking good. That's essentially what I want. Great. Now, of course, the scale, you can change this however you want. It's very easy. And if you have a seamlessly tiled map, you could see all of that in action. Once I decrease that, you could see that it does tile a bit, but it's really not that bad because I would never see the wood this small. So I think 1 is just fine. It really is giving me everything that I need. It's really the size of the wood that I would expect to see. Of course, weather is on. Do we want the rain and snow and all of that to accumulate on this material and be affected by it? Yeah, sure, why not? So then finally, that's everything that we've looked at on the base level of wood, but we've got the settings, and I'm not sure why it's broken up this way, but we've got further settings within the actual wood material. The first being the bump. And I'm sure if you've dealt with any sort of material outside of SketchUp, and maybe even within SketchUp, you are familiar with a bump map. In this case, we're not necessarily looking for a bump map. We're looking for a normal map. And they're kind of interchangeable in a sense to where normal map is going to apply a physically based material and apply to that. But a bump map, at least in years past, was just kind of a black and white version of your color map or your diffuse map. Whereas now a normal map you're going to see it's got ranges between yellow and blue and green, and it's going to look kind of funky, but it will take some of the properties and some of the look from your diffuse map. It's just going to give you the height. So the bump, whether you want to call it bump or normal, whatever, it's generating the height or the displacement of your particular material in 3D and giving it a little more physically real looking appearance. So Twinmotion calls it bump. I wish it did not, but it does. So bump, if I just change this value, does nothing because, of course, if we go to more, the default is just some basic generic. It's solid color, doesn't really do anything. But again, I want to come into open, and then here's our normal map. It's this blue looking map, and a lot of them will look this way. So as soon as I do that, we can immediately see, if I zoom in here, a stark difference in some of these values. So right now I've got the bump at 100, and as I bring this up and down, you can see that there's a distinct difference between having a bump map or having a normal map and not. So if I bring it down to 0, it's if I don't have it, and if I did not add that map. And if I bring it up to 100, that map is in full action. It's doing everything that I'd like it to. So that gives it one more sense of real. And that's great. So then we've got glow. Now, glow is, of course, fun because I can make this particular cube glow, but it's wood, so I don't have glow out of the wood. It's not a self-illuminating wood. Now, if you do have a material that does have that, you can click more, and then again, we've got the same texture. And so if you want to specify where that particular element's going to glow, you can use really any other map that we've used. But that's, again, it's based on black and white values. Where it's white is where it will glow. So you have to determine that yourself and then change the values off of 0. Now, I'm not going to make the wood glow, so I'll leave it there. Now, metalness. Metalness is a distinct part of PBR materials, physically based rendered materials, in that we are actually able to use metalness maps to determine where and how much metal appearance we have in our particular material. So this is wood. I don't have metal anywhere because it's wood. Now, if you want to get like way into the nitty gritty, yeah, I've got some screws here and those are metal. And if you want to go and edit a particular map to show those particular screw locations to be white and everything else be black, that's how you could achieve a metalness look from those particular screws, but I'm not going to. And because I'm not going to do anything metal with this wood, I'm going to leave the metalness off. Now, if I turn it on, I immediately get this, really reflective and, I guess more metal looking material. And it's actually dark because it's pulling this basic and generic white, fully metallic texture that's just default with materials. So I want to turn that off. Don't want to worry about that at all. So I can hit two-sided. That's not going to do much. I really never find myself needing to make a two-sided material, and that's unless you've got a plane or something that you're working with. X-ray is kind of bizarre. I'm not sure why it's kind of built into the materials itself, but the idea is that if I turn X-ray on, this material, the whole material becomes an X-ray material, and I can, in a sense, see through it. And you'll also notice that all of the other settings within my entire material are blank. I can't do anything at all except go and change the X-ray values of the material there. And so it's one giant override. So you wouldn't necessarily do this unless you're going to make a specific X-ray material. So I'll just turn it off. And so there we go. I like the wood. It looks pretty good. It's doing its job. It's not bad at all. We can change the sun, time of day, and we can get some different looks. It does look pretty good. That's the type of wood that I'm after. It's definitely not bad at all. I do like it a lot. So there's our wood. Does not look bad at all. Let's move on to a metal material, because this is going to be slightly different, not like crazy different, but different in a sense to where, we have one more thing to worry about. So let's now look at this metal material. So we've got our wood material, looks good. Now let's move on to the metal. So again, I'm going to go to the eyedropper, click the grid button. I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to rename this to metal. There's our metal. I'm going to first apply it because why not? And so we've got this metal material. It's applied there, but I don't see anything. So again, we're going to go to color, and I can always change the color. This doesn't really matter. It's not going to do anything because I actually want to see the color of the diffuse map, the color map that I'm applying myself. So let's hit more. I will come in here and open this texture and then add one myself. So I'm going to go up to my metal, and it's just a basic brush steel. So there's my albedo. It's a PNG. So let's go to do this. There we go. And there's a slight difference there. It's a little gray. Okay, not much is going on yet. That's fine. All of this is fine. I don't need to change any of these other details. That's good. The reflection, again, we're going to go back to our roughness map. So I have a particular roughness, and you'll notice it's a bit gray. So if it were black, there'd be no metal. If it were white, it would be 100% metal, and it would be 100% reflective. So that wouldn't make sense either because it's not literally a mirror. Because this is a brush steel, it makes sense that my metalness would be somewhere in the gray values. So good, that looks good. And remember, just to make things a little more normal looking, let's put our reflection at 50% because at least we want to start at somewhere normal. And we can start to see our wood there, looks pretty good, but there's not a whole lot to see other than some reflection until we go to the settings. So our bump, here we go. Our bump's at 100%, but there's nothing there until we add our map. Let's go to open. And then we've got our metal normal. Okay, not too bad. We're getting a little more personality out of the wood. Not too much yet, though. But the real difference starts to come in whenever we turn the metalness on. So I'm going to turn my metalness on, and there we go. We can really see what we want to see. And we've got even some of those details within our metal. But we're not done yet because we want to add that metalness map. We want to open this up. We want to make sure that we are applying that metalness map. There's our metalness map. In this case, it is essentially white because it's fully metal. Whereas where the reflections go, our roughness was kind of somewhere in the middle. Because it's all metal, we're going to do white here, and then there we go. That looks good. Really, that's looking like a really nice brush steel. We're getting the nice effect from, of course, our bump. So you could see the difference the bump makes right there. Our metalness is on. I don't want it to glow, anything like that. But yeah, that looks really good. It's a nice brushed steel. I like that a lot. So there's two very different types of materials, our wood and our custom steel. Now, finally, I want to get into a new material. And again, I'm going to make another material. I'm going to call this fence. And so the thing that will be different about the fence here is that it's not only going to be metal, but it's going to be cut out, like as if it's literally like a crosshatch fence. It's a fence that you would see just in a residential neighborhood. And the idea is that you might have a material that has a cutout in it. You might have a material that is, got pieces missing, something like that. You've got cracks in it or something. You want to be able to see through it. That is actually possible. And so how do we do this? Well, we first want to add our material and our color material. I'm going to change this again. I'm going to open this. Now go out to our fence. And so I've only got two different materials here to work with, or two different files. I've got this basic albedo, and there we go. I'm going to click that, and immediately I have everything that is showing up correctly. And you might ask why, like why did this happen versus not getting any cutouts in either one of these other materials? Well, that has everything to do with the opacity mask. And that's because I have this on. If I turn this off, we can see our base file like there. And my base file does have all of these cutouts, but with the opacity mask off, we can now not see through the material. So before I move on, how do we make sure that this is applied? I mean, we might have to say that you have to have this opacity mask working. So how do we do this? Well, it's actually going to be within Photoshop. So I've got Photoshop here, and then here's my file, and everything I need. I've specifically taken this particular file, which has my fence here, and then I have masked out everything behind the fence so we can see the cutout. And I just want to make sure that I've got everything set up this way, and like this looks good. And because I have everything set up this way, and I have it all cut out, and I have gone ahead and saved this as a PNG, then the opacity mask is going to pull from, and we can specifically see this when we go to the channels. Now, of course, I just see all my RGB channels here, but when I choose my masking layer, I choose the layer and I choose the mask itself and go to channel, I could see there is my layer mask. And if I show that, this is what we're looking at, and everything in red, in this case, is cut out. And that is applying directly to my mask, and that's exactly what my mask is. So that makes perfect sense. So the idea is that Twinmotion is somehow smart enough to essentially turn that on whenever I have turned the opacity mask on. And so it's kind of working for us here, and it looks really good. Now, it does turn the corner, and we can see everything that we need to here. But, when I zoom in here, it looks kind of funny. Like it's got those weird white outlines that I don't actually see in the Photoshop file. So again, I want my luminosity at 50%. Everything else is fine. Now I'm going to go to my reflection. And for this, I'm going to do basically, you could use really whatever you want because it's just the roughness. And, in a sense, you could use the same value as your diffuse, and I'm going to do that. Now, that doesn't make a huge difference right now, but I'm going to put the reflection up to 50%, make that look a little more like we'd expect. Okay. And then finally, let's go to settings. and then a bump map. So I do have a normal map. I'm going to open and then add my normal map there. That's going to look good. Give me a little more definition. You know, they're starting to look a little more normal, like what we'd expect. There's that 3D element to it, and you can see that in effect whenever I remove the bump. You know, we can see that there's a little more shadow to it. There's a little more definition to it, and it looks good. So finally, the metalness. This makes all the difference because this is a metal material. So again, I'm going to hit metalness on. And as soon as I do that, all of our white lines are cleared up. And this looks like a really nice fence. Like it looks really good, especially from a distance. It's doing its job. It looks great. And you might say, yeah, you want to go ahead and change the map. But because this is what it is, it's applying the same value of metalness everywhere across the entire material because it's the same material. And there's nothing really that's varying across the material map itself. And the opacity is taking care of the mask, and I can see through it. So the metalness, I don't really need a metalness map, and it wouldn't really do a lot if I did. You could always make one if you were able to export with one. It doesn't matter, but this looks like a really good fence. It's getting the job done. It looks nice, and it was pretty simple. Just make sure you have that alpha channel. Alpha channel is what it's called technically, but as long as you have that mask applied, it's going to breed directly from the material, and you're going to be able to turn that on and off really easily. Just like that, really simple. You can even see some of the depth with the opacity mask off. But anyways, that will do it for custom materials within Twinmotion. We went ahead and made a nice wood material that looks pretty good, a metal material that has more to it because it is metal. And then finally, a material that kind of has both. It's metal and got cutouts in this fence. So I sure hope you enjoyed this video. If you did happen to learn something, please demolish that like button. It really helps me out a lot. Also, consider subscribing. That does as well. If you stuck around this long, you're awesome. Thank you very much. And I hope to see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.